Hi, welcome to Drama Means. We're talking about the 2024 Chinese drama Pegasus. Today, drama means fast cars, drama means changing your destiny, and drama means finding your place in the world.
So here we go with a little bit of a summary. The life of hotshot rally car racer Zhang Chi comes to a screeching halt when he's injured in a freak car accident. But after being sidelined for 5 years, he's ready to make his comeback. But there's a new rising star in the world of Chinese rally racing, Lin Zhendong. Now the two go head to find out who is the fastest, and despite winning the race, Zhang Chi's car malfunctions, causing a horrific accident that lands him in a coma. Now instead of waking up in a hospital with his friends at his bedside, Zhang Chi awakens to find himself 5 years in the past and in the body of a young Lin Zhendong. But this version of him has no interest in becoming the best rally driver in China. At least not yet. So for those out there who don't know, I am very much into motorcycles and cars, and Mel has been using that to try to get me to watch different dramas for quite some time. And I've sat through the terrible display of motorsports from, was it Pit Babe and Love in the Air, which are both Thai dramas. And they were trying their best, but the action was really slow and not very impressive. And they tried to use almost exclusively camera tricks to make any of the racing good. Like it was pretty amateur.
I agree with Love in the Air, but I think Pit Babe was actually pretty decent. Especially there was a scene where they were doing like kind of a street race, and then I thought they did relatively well with it.
The parts I saw of Pit Babe, I kept thinking they relied way too much on speeding up the camera, and it felt like someone was always explaining the drama, like a little over-explaining the drama because they didn't want to show very much of the car. It always felt like they were trying to avoid showing the cars. And so I don't have a lot of faith when we go into Pegasus of like, oh, here is a Chinese drama about rally racing, which I'm a big fan of rally. And I would love it to be great, but I didn't have a lot of hopes that A, the racing would be good, and B, the story would be good. But I do appreciate them taking, a character drama and, what we've come to know as kind of relationship romance dramas, and then set them in a backdrop of something that we haven't really seen. Like, how many office romances have we seen? How many high school and college and coming of age romances have we seen? Like so many cafes, everything's set in a coffee shop. And I do applaud them for going, no, we're going to do this in the world of rally.
I don't know how much you would call this a romance drama, though. There's not actually, like, romance is very, very much on the back burner as opposed to brotherhood, like a band of misfits kind of thing.
I completely agree. And actually, one of my knocks on this drama is I think they could have gone further with the romantic relationships. I think they would have been able to build out more of a story for these different characters if they would have leaned into it. Like 20% more. Like, I'm not saying they had to make the same show again with just romance and longing looks across crowded rooms. Like, it didn't need to be that. But like 20% focusing on that more and 20% less on the racing. Like, I think the brotherhood was good and the friendships were all really good. We can talk about the strengths of the show in a second. But it did feel like it was missing a little bit of that kind of that familiar spark of lead romance. So yes, that's me saying the show needed more romance. But I will say, I did think that for the most part, especially at the beginning, the car stuff was really well done. I thought it was fairly accurate as to what it's like to be a rally driver, and the action in the car was really good. I think they probably had some pretty fantastic stunt people driving. It was pretty good, and they weren't afraid to show it. I think they really didn't mind going, hey, here's racing, and we're going to show you a lot of it.
I got very excited after the first episode with how much racing there really was, and it was really exciting, and I was like, looking forward to more of it in the drama. So it really did get it piqued my interest right away.
And I do think rally is a little difficult because it's not like NASCAR and Formula One where there's a bunch of tracks and they're racing like bumper to bumper and they're nudging each other and like the rivalry, like you're literally looking out the window with the other guy going grr. Like rally is against the clock. So it's hard. I think it's a hard sport for Americans to love because it's just a car by itself going through the wilderness, racing the clock. And it doesn't bring out that American, competitive spirit the way that the sports that are so mainstream in America do. Football, we were literally cracking our heads against each other. Like that's a very American brand of sport. So rally is a little difficult to make exciting.
Yeah, although they did really well in this drama. Great. And I felt like they made it like very competitive amongst the characters.
Yeah, they pulled the drama out between the racers and the teams and the rivalries pretty well, and trying to keep that stuff alive the whole time.
And I am going to say that there is another racing drama called We Go Fast on Trust. And actually, this came out before Pegasus, and I had been like, oh, we need to watch this. It has racing in it. Hey, let's watch this. But then he was just always like, oh, yeah, later. And then Pegasus came along, and we ended up watching Pegasus first.
Just from that title, I know there's more romance in that one than there is in Pegasus.
Yeah, definitely. I actually know nothing about it. And also I saw no like social media on this one. So I'm assuming it's actually not that good. But I do like both actors.
Wait, where's it from? What's the drama from?
It's a Chinese drama.
Okay, so racing. They're just going all in on racing.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's like probably, two different studios competing against each other, which happens a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, like, racing, I think, overall in the world, motorsports is starting to have its moment with Drive to Survive. I mean, let's say Formula One is a massive sport, and rally is huge in the countries that it is huge in Finland and Norway and parts of Europe and South America and Mexico. I was talking to some rally drivers, and they were talking about going to World Rally event in Mexico, and how just hundreds of thousands of people would come out and line the streets of just the transition roads between the stages. Like not even where the race takes place, just the public roads where the cars drive to get from each stage to each stage. And he was like, it blew his mind because he's used to racing in the US where the sport is small and grassroots. And then you go to Mexico and it's just bonkers popular in some areas. So racing is having its day in mainstream with Drive to Survive, and with, in America we now have 2 or 3 Formula One races now. And so I think maybe it feels like, just from other things that I'm interested in and read, it seems like China is really trying to get into the motorsport game. They're pushing really hard in the world of motorcycles right now with a company called CF Moto.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so it feels like China is looking at this market going, well, why do all Asian motorcycles on the world stage come from Japan? Why is it Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and then it's BMW, Ducati, Triumph, these bikes, KTM, nothing's coming out of China. And they're like, well, wait a minute, this is a huge export that we're missing out on.
So I do have to say, first and foremost, there were 2 things that really pulled me into this drama, and first being the racing, and then second would be the acting. And just watching Hu Xianshu switch between him as Ling Zhendong and then into Zhang Shi, like both of his characters he does so well, and it's just it just really highlights the differences in character, and he does both, like, in my opinion, perfectly. And I've watched him in previous things, and I've always thought that he was a really good actor, and he was someone to really, like, keep your eye on. And I think this particular drama, like, I'll be surprised if he doesn't get an award for this project.
I think it's all actors' dream to play 2 characters at once, or play twins, or get the chance to show your chops in both directions. So he's playing, this kind of stuck-up rich brat, and then this very crass, downright rude, like headstrong rally racer. And then we get to see how both those characters arc in opposite ways.
Yes.
But then never being the same character, even when they're arcing. They don't turn into each other ever, which again, a lesser actor may lean on that crutch to go, oh, well, I'll take this actor and I'll take this character and turn him into this character. That never really happened.
Yeah, I think he does really, really well with it, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much, and I was a little like sad when like that his version of Zhang Shi like kind of goes away, and I'm just like, oh, I miss it when he turns into Zhang Shi.
They had to go away with it at one point, though.
Well, yes, yeah. I knew that, and I understood it, but it's just like, you know, just to, and the thing is, there are like, you know, after he changes a little bit, there are times when he kind of lets go of his character, and it's not quite Zhang Shi, but he's like, you know, like he's just a looser Ling Zhendong.
Right, and it's like a mature version of Zhang Shi is just like a little more relaxed and a little less intense than what he was when he kind of first bursts back onto the scene.
Yeah.
Because he's pretty an immature person, like as a character, whether or not he's being played by which actor. Yeah. That character is fairly immature. Even up until the end, I think, like we see some points of maturity, but it is something I kind of really appreciated about the show was if you race cars for a living, you have to be a little immature, you have to be a little childish, you have to be massively selfish, and you have to be kind of an egomaniac. You won't be good at the thing you're supposed to be good at unless you are most of those things. It's just, that's what makes you good at pushing a car as fast as it can go down roads where it shouldn't be going that fast and nearly crashing at every single turn. That's the type of person who does it. So it made me really appreciate that, like, they never took that away from these guys. Like, one of the guys is a calculating racer and the other just is an aggressive racer, which are but they both have egos.
Yeah. There are times when I do wish that when Hu Xianxu does his version of Zhang Shi to like seem a little bit more like Wang Yanling's version of Zhang Shi. There are times when like I feel like, oh, the way he's doing Zhang Shi is completely different. And there aren't that many times when you really see that they're like alike unless it's made for you to see that they're alike. Like when they go to a hot pot restaurant and they each get one side of the pot, but they order exactly the same thing. Like that was done for the audience to see that they are exactly the same. But then there are times when like an over top version of Zhang Shi, you know, when he does it. So it's like I kind of wanted to see more similarity.
Well, it's interesting because I do think I had said that too. I had thought that he was doing a really fun version of the character. It wasn't necessarily the other guy's version of the character too. So I always call back to like Looper, where you have Joseph Gordon-Levitt basically doing a Bruce Willis impression the entire movie. Like he is doing Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
It was less that in this. But then as it settled in, I kind of gave them a little bit of a pass because there's a version of Zhang Shi who had been injured for 5 years, sat on the sideline, was forced to cook fried rice in front of his empty garage with his broken down car inside, had been through all these things, came back to have this massive comeback only to end up in a coma. And then there's a version of Zhang Shi who hasn't gone through any of that, who hasn't had those darkest days yet. And so I kind of forgave the difference a little bit because one guy had experienced a lot more than the other guy.
Yeah.
And I think as the show goes on, you realize that the version that has come back from like the future, like one of these guys isn't going to exist. You know, there's only going to be one of them that kind of comes through their life and experiences all of this at once, if that makes any sense as time travel goes, you know.
Yeah. So I think it really started strong. And then also I really liked the friendly rivalry that developed between Ling Zhendong, Liao Duo, and Noel.
Basically the rookie class.
Yeah, the rookie rally drivers. The drama really could have gone in like a whole different direction with like, you know, just toxic rivals and doing really evil things to each other and always yelling at each other. And they didn't do it that way. And I really appreciated that. And I really liked this, like, just this, they're friends. They hang out on their free time. You know, it's just that they are rivals when they're racing, but they wouldn't even think twice to help each other when they need, when the other needs it. And I really like that. I like sportsmanship. I don't like a-holes.
Well, it's interesting because I did not expect them to go this way, but then thinking about it, this is a real thing that's happening in motorsports right now, where you have these older guys, the retired guys, or guys who are and gals that are on the edge of, kind of moving on from their racing careers. They hate each other. Like the racers can't stand to be in the same room. And these younger drivers and riders and motorcycles and cars, they all grow up together. On the weekends, they play PlayStation together. They race sim racing together. They go out to eat together. They Instagram together. They're all buddies. And the media doesn't always know what to do with them because they're trying to pit them against each other and ask them leading questions and get them to talk crap and stir up all the drama that media wants to stir up. And they're finding this next generation of drivers and riders aren't really all that interested in it. Like, you have of course, there's definitely competition, there's definitely rivalries. Some people don't like each other, but for the most part, it's weird. These guys kind of just hang out in their free time, and then they put the helmets on, and then it's business.
Yeah, and I like the thought of, I'm just trying to win myself. I'm competing against my own record, my own speed. And I prefer that over like, oh, this person, stepped on my toes and I really hate them and now I'm going to do something bad to them. I'm like, I don't think real people like generally go to hurt others like on purpose. I mean, I'm sure there are like other people who do that, but like for the most part, I like to believe that, people are mainly just gonna go and do their own thing and not hurt others for the sake of hurting others.
Well, it is like in most sports, like whenever we talk about cheating scandals are normally about making yourself better, not necessarily sabotaging someone else. You don't hear a lot of stories about someone sabotaging someone else. You hear, oh, I took steroids, or I made my car illegally too fast, or something like that. It's very rare, I think, in sports we find someone actively sabotaging their competition by, poisoning their Kool-Aid or whatever, like you would normally go to. And I think in this show they kind of have the ratio right. They have the kind of one driver who anything goes. He's willing to cheat, he's willing to sabotage, he's willing to backstab, he's willing to make dirty deals to be the best. And then everyone else is just interested in being the best that they can be. And what does that mean? Does that mean training on a sim, or working out, or a special diet, or a special mental training program, whatever that means? With the girl's character, what's her name? The rookie driver, Noelle?
Yeah, Noelle.
When Noelle is like, oh, I need to go back to Finland because I got to train harder. I'm not good yet. Like, you guys have proven to me that I'm not there yet. I am now going to go somewhere else and work on myself. Rather than, well, I'm going to figure out how to sabotage you so that I can be the best. Which, are you really the best if you have to cheat to win? Like, if you have to, like, actively sabotage someone else, can you really go home and look at the trophy case and be like, who was the best today? This guy.
Yeah. I do think that Zhang Chi and Xiaohe's like relationship more yelling at each other than like romance, which bothers me.
I did not want to really see them together. I didn't care.
Yeah. Like, I understood it, like their relationship and stuff. It's so hard and like tiring to watch. I didn't particularly want to see them and their storyline. And it was just, for me, I was like, I'm so glad that romance is on the back burner and not, in the forefront, because I did not want to see that.
I was campaigning for, like, couple switch. Like, the whole time, I'm like, no. Zhang Chi should be with the cop, because they're both kind of like bricks. Like, she's super tough, and she's a cop, and he's, like, rude, and the other girl, she's, like, calculating and logistical, and, like, Ling Zhendong is, like, calculating and logistical. Like, they should just, like, be with each other that way. And Mel's like, no, that's so stupid. That's never gonna happen.
And, like, the weird age gap, like, weirds me out, too. Like, not that age gaps are, like, that bad, but it was weird.
I knew they were not going to do it, but I'm like, it just kind of highlighted the fact that the main couple in this, because they are kind of the only couple in this, isn't that strong. Yeah. And they're kind of toxic and maybe not good for each other.
And once they, like, actually got together. I guess they're okay. They stopped being, I mean, they still kind of yelled at each other every so often, but like,
Yeah, it wasn't quite as toxic.
yeah. But up to that point, it was like annoying. And like, it was when he broke his leg. And then Ling Zhendong won the race. And she said something really, like, to me, it was crossing the line. Like, after that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's not, and it just doesn't seem right because of how much she cares for him and how much she really, like, loves him. I feel like that's something that you don't say, and something that you personally would not cross that line. And she did it as this kind of, like, nonchalant, like throw it in his face kind of, dig. And it was like, it was hurtful. Character wise, I'm like, you're evil. You're not a good person if you say things like that to someone who's injured and like his future is possibly over.
You know what's weird is that I totally get that she was hurt by him kind of rejecting her because he's injured and he doesn't want, to drag her down and blah, blah, blah. And so he basically kind of shuns her. And so she's got a broken heart. I get it. But he had a reason for saying the things, and whether or not you agree with the reasons that he said those things, he did have a reason. And I'm not saying it's even a good reason, but he had a reason. She had no reason to walk off stage and be like, he won and you're a cripple and you suck and go back to the old folks' home. Like, what? There's no reason to say that.
That's the thing, like I get it if you're mad, and I get it that you want to hurt him, right? Because he hurt you, and there's just that one thing you don't say because you still love him. You still are like deep down, she still like wants to make up with him. She wants, enough time has passed in between like that fight where she's like hot-headed to the point where like, they're just kind of not talking to each other, but they're like existing in the same like world, It's just like she should have cooled down enough that she doesn't cross that line. And that was a really, really like rude, mean, hurtful thing to say. And it's just like, to me, it's out of character because of how much she loves him and how much she cares for him and how much she's worried about him. That should have already crossed her mind. That is something that is like you don't touch that, because that is like that thorn in his heart, and you just went and like jabbed that in further in his heart. Like, there's other things you could have said that would have been like, haha, but that was like, no, you don't touch that.
Yeah, mean is the right way. It's just mean for mean's sake. That's all.
Yeah, and that was uncalled for. And at that point, I was like, yeah, I don't care if they get back together. And like, the thing is, I was on her side. Like, most of the time, I was like, yeah, because he's like dumb, and like this whole like his reasoning is dumb, whatever. But the moment she said that, I was like, no, that's not what people do.
No, it was uncalled for.
Yeah.
I want to talk about my favorite character, though.
Okay.
Because, weirdly, this show has two leads, in a way. Like, both the guys feel like they're almost co-leads of the show. And they're not bad. I don't think either character I disliked or found annoying. They had their good scenes and their bad. But the best character, the most flawless character in the entire thing, was Lao Ye, the boss man. Speeding Racing's boss man. I loved this guy all the way, in all of it. And I thought the actor was really charming. It's a weird to call the mentor kind of old guy, like the charming one. I thought he was so charming the way he portrayed this character.
I a lot of times find those characters like charming or like the most interesting.
Interesting, yes, but I felt like every time you looked at him, you almost wanted to smile.
Yeah.
Because he had this warmth about him. He had this care about him to the team. He really loved his people, but not in a generic way, in a very specific way to all of them. He kind of knew how to pull the strings. He knew when to push and when to pull and when to relax and when to give them a hard time. And when he decided to climb back in the rally car, I mean, the first time when they're kind of training, he goes back in, but when he climbs back in the rally car near the end, I'm just like, I don't know why I didn't expect that to happen. It was so telegraphed, but I guess I was just, just kind of watching and enjoying. That made me so happy that he was in the car with Lin Zhendong. Like, it was just like, yes.
So I actually thought that Zhang Shi was going to be Lin Zhendong's co-driver. Like what they're going to end up with just one car, and it was just makes sense for them to be in one car together, and they didn't do that, which is fine. And I do like that Lao Ye was the co-driver. It worked really well for his character, for Lin Zhendong, like all that. I didn't really like that Lin Zhendong's dad climbed in.
Yeah, I didn't love that. I mean, I understood why they did that too. And I think looking at it, because this is kind of a dual male lead show, that putting them in the same car, yes, they can help each other by being driver and co-driver, but the way that they helped each other while being rivals is a little stronger. And they also each had their own dragon to slay.
Yeah.
Like, Lin Zhendong needed to slay the father, and Zhang Shi needed to slay master racing D-bag guy. So I get why I thought that too. I think that's probably why I didn't think that Lao Ye was going to get in the car. Is that it's like, oh, well, they've got one car that works. You got two drivers. We'll throw the drivers together.
Yeah.
But again, egos probably keep that from happening.
Yeah.
But I thought his character, Lao Ye, I enjoyed it. I thought the progression of it. And he is, when Zhang Shi goes back, it's almost his first priority. Like, he cares about the girl and the fact that they don't have a relationship. But one of his first things is he goes to Lao Ye and is like, don't walk any dogs, because that's how he died in the previous history. And it's like, stay away from dogs. Don't walk any dogs. Like,
stay away from bigger cars.
Yeah. And like, it was like losing that mentor tore him apart.
Yeah.
And that's how important this guy. And then they demonstrate over and over again in the show why he feels this way about this guy, and why the audience should also feel this way about this guy. And we go into the spoilers right now with this specific thing. I mean, we kind of already are there.
We've been spoiling this whole time, but yeah.
Not all that much. I mean, just a bit. But this is pretty big. When Lao Ye dies, they overdo the funeral. I think they have 16 funerals for him. They overdo it a bit, but I did feel the emotion of it, of losing him in the moment they lost him. Again, putting the team before himself in all aspects all the time.
Yeah.
It was very fitting. It was well done. The tributes were good. You did feel that.
Yeah. It was really, really emotional. I did get funeraled out, though.
Yeah, I mean, there literally was, 16 is maybe too many, but there's like 4 stand around and wear black clothes and look like we're at a funeral scenes. Like, there's like, it happens quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of over the top. And honestly, in my opinion, when you do it that way, it kind of takes away from it. So it's, to me, less effective.
Yeah, I agree. I think the moment where he goes is so powerful that we've all seen the scene where you stand around and you look at the picture and you burn the incense and you cry. Like, we've seen that scene over and over again. We can skip it now. Like, that film vocabulary has been built up. Like, there's a lot of things that we do skip through now. Like, a lot of times we skip through love scenes because how many different ways can you show a love scene? There's a lot of shows, you push right up to the point where the love scene starts and you just cut past it because the audience vocabulary has been built up for that. You're not going to show them anything that they haven't already seen. You really can't show them that much anyway. And so we just skip past it. And I think that they could have done that here, of just letting us, just trusting us that we were sad already. I thought the only one that was worth it was when they went and put the the leopard up on the hill to overlook the track, and he has the two little drivers in his hands.
Oh, that was so cute. I love the little two drivers in his hands, just like cradled like little babies, right? And it's just so cute, and it's so like meaningful.
Yeah, that was the one that I'm like, if you're going to do one, do that one. I don't need to see the incense burning. I don't need to see the actual funeral. Like, to just do that. Like, tribute to the guy where he lived his life, which was on the racetrack.
Yeah. So, I want to complain. I want to complain a lot about Ling Zhendong's parents. I get it. There are a lot of bad parents out in this world. I get it. I understand it. But it makes no sense to me. Because they just seem so like caricatures.
Yeah, they don't feel real. They don't feel human being at all. Like, I didn't understand the relationship between the mom and the dad at all. Like, I don't understand how those two ever are together. Even if the world is a different place when they met, I don't understand how those two are together. I don't understand why they have a kid. I don't understand what they wanted for their kid. I don't understand anything about the backstory, like why it's supposed to make sense.
So you're obsessed with racing and you leave your family. But essentially, like, no one in this world thought he was alive.
He faked his own death. I mean, in a sense, like, he had an accident. He went missing. After a certain amount of time, you would have been declared dead. There would have been paperwork. She would have gotten not a divorce, but basically she would have been able to not be married to a dead person anymore. And then you just spring up 17 years later. Not only do you just roll right back into, like, life as usual, per usual, you also still have a racing license for some reason after you faked your death. Like, what?
It makes absolutely no sense to me.
It's less than 17, or how many years he was gone.
It was 17 years. I'm like, he faked his death. I mean, he disappeared for 17 years, like, off the grid. No one knew that he was alive. And then all of a sudden showing up and everyone's like, oh, cool.
Yeah, and also my biggest problem with this backstory is it's not relatable. Because it's just so not real. Like, I think we can all say we've had disagreements with our parents. I don't think there's anyone in the world that can say they've never had a disagreement with their parents. So when you have disagreements with your parents, that is relatable. You know, people have parents that leave. People have parents that abandon them. People have parents that abuse them. We can identify with those things because everyone knows a friend or yourself or someone that has gone through a really rough time with some bad parents. I don't know a single human being in the history of the world that I've ever come across, or as a friend of a friend, or a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, had a dad that faked his own death, disappeared for 17 years, and then came back. Like, how would you even begin to process the emotions that were around that? And how would the audience know how to process those emotions?
Yeah. Let's talk about the mom. Because to me, the mom is even worse. Because literally, like, I get it. Your husband disappeared and you hate racing. Let it be because you thought this racing killed your husband, or the fact that your husband loved racing so much and abandoned your family. You hate racing. I get it. But when it comes to a point when it seems like your son is developing multiple personalities with an underlying, like, because of a disappearance of his father, and you're still like, no, you're not allowed to do this because it's all about me. Like, there is an issue. That is a bad mom right there. Then finally, you know, the dad comes back, and then it turns into this, like, I'm gonna stick it to him. And she literally uses her own son as a pawn to get back at the dad. And I'm just like, well, fuck this lady. I'm done. She is like, I wrote her off already.
She never treats her son as a human being. The entire show. Like, she treats him as a do what I say. Like, she treats him like a dog at the beginning. And I think your point about the multiple personality, like, let's just say that there was no such thing as magic time travel coma patient. Your son is the son of a very famous rally racer in China. He raced go-karts when he was a kid. He lost his father just like you lost your husband. And now in adulthood, he has developed a borderline personality disorder, and his alternate personality really wants to race. Why don't you get him help? And I know he's seeing like a therapist for a couple scenes in it, which is such a side idea of the show. But the idea that your stance is still no racing bad, and your son is going through a psychotic break from your point of view, because you don't know about time travel and coma patient from 2027. So from your point of view, your son is going through a mental break because he hasn't processed the loss of his father. And your brilliant idea is you're grounded.
Forcing him to leave to a different country where you are not at.
Well, yeah, she sends him away. She basically banishes him. She isolates him. Like, it's just so evil. It made me question the emotional capacity of the people writing the show. That you missed such a glaring oversight in your own show. Aren't you thinking of this from all your characters' perspectives and going, well, wait a minute, from her perspective, her son is going crazy. We can play this character in a way that is so concerned and convinced he's sick, and we would have been behind that. We would have been like, oh yeah, mom thinks he's sick and she wants to like put him into a fucking psychiatric program and get him the help he needs. She could have been compassionate and still against racing. But instead, they chose this just caricature, is a great word. Just, no, bad. And then the pawn thing, holy moly. Like talking about using your kids, like people, talk about like parents using their kids in the divorce to get each other. Oh, I want custody because it'll really hurt my wife. And it's like, well, do you want custody because you want to treat your kids well? Or do you want custody because you're just using your kids as a weapon? And man, what a unforgivable, miserable bitch.
Yeah. I was done. I was over it. I was so mad for him because not only his best friend, he considers his best friend, basically backstab him. Though his friend didn't think that it was backstabbing him per se, it was a backstabbing. So he's going through that. Then he feels completely isolated. And then with the egos between two drivers, they don't want to go back, right? So he's like alone. He has no more support group, basically. And then his own mom demands that he's goes and signs under his rival racing team. Like, it's like, wow, he has nobody. He can't turn to anybody because of this. And his closest person, which should be his mom, was not there for him.
And also she put him in such a weird position because beating racing team is now looking at him like, oh, has this been your plan the whole time? And now he has to go back to them and be like, hey, this wasn't my idea. So now you're putting him in a really weird position. And you're outing him in front of the media rather than doing it. I get it, everyone. It's dramatic to have a press conference and have everything come out. But also, shouldn't characters talk to each other? Like, really, Mom? You're going to spring this on me and you thought I would just be like, okay, fine with me. Like, and then at the end when they try to like redeem the mom by like she shows up with the car and she's like upgraded the car for the last race so that he can go. I'm like, honestly, go fuck yourself, lady. I'd rather ride a bicycle. Like this like smug look she gives when she's like, go get him, kid. It's like, shut up.
Yeah.
You are awful.
Yeah. So, like, I know they didn't even give the mom character a second thought. I think they just wrote, like, some generic mom just to, like, help whatever plot they're trying to do, And again, as we say, like, just throwing something in there just because it's convenient to, like, move the plot along without really giving it much thought, like, really irritates me.
I think a big problem with this show is that they didn't give a lot of their secondary characters a lot of thought. Like, they don't really get into the other members of the speeding team, the mechanic and the girl who rides the motorcycle and the co-driver, Zhang Shi's co-driver. Like, they don't really give us any information about them throughout the show. Like, there's no real change in them. They're just kind of the gang, you know? And the same thing with the mom and even the dad. Like, we don't know anything about the dad other than he liked racing. He goes fast. He crashed and we thought he died. Like, that's the entirety of his character.
It's also like, what the hell did you do for like the last 17 years? Where were you?
Well, they threw one line of dialogue at that. He was racing illegally in like Brazil. And he was like, I know you've been racing illegally in Brazil for the last 17 years because that pays well.
Yeah. But also, like, they knew nothing about him, and then all of a sudden, when he got back, like, they all of a sudden knew everything. It just made no sense.
Well, that was the other thing. The whole time I'm watching this going, does no one understand who Lin Zedong's dad is? Like, how do they not know? Like, they all know this massively famous rally car racer. Like, everyone knows in Formula One, everyone knows Michael Schumacher. Everyone knows he has a kid named Mick Schumacher. Like, if you're into racing, you know those two things exist. There's no way that they wouldn't know this guy, these two are related.
Yeah.
And then it's treated as like such a reveal. Like, oh my God, that's your dad?
It's like, everyone should have known.
Yeah, I don't know how. And they never explain how they hit it. Like, if they would have explained earlier, like, I've done a lot to, like, erase his past from this family. You know what I mean? Like, if the mom would have gone through, you know, obviously they don't have the same name. Like, he does have a different name. Okay, fine. But, like, public records are public records. And also just, we have scenes of him at a go-kart track with his kid.
Yeah.
Those other kids he's racing are basically other racers that became racers. People know he had a kid.
Yeah. Anyway, and like you're telling me, out of all the years that he like won rally car races, that his family was never there, and then like maybe took a picture with his dad, like.
No, it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense to me.
Yeah. So a lot, there's so much wrong that it like kind of negates all the good. So I don't know, I think I've mentioned it over and over again in previous episodes that my biggest pet peeve is changing a character's personality just to serve the plot. And it really bothers me. It's frustrating as hell. Actually, there is one drama that happens in, and that made me want to do a podcast. So that is because I wanted to bitch about it. And so this is another one where Hong Kuo's complete personality changed after one little tiny thing to become like the backstabber that he became, right? And it's just like, they never showed him having that type of personality for it to like all of a sudden like, oh, the one guy didn't buy him a milk tea and then he just like flew off the handles and then decided to ruin the race and like, you know, and like, I'm like, that's not you. That's not your personality. Like, why? What the hell happened?
He really, really, really likes milk tea.
I fucking love milk tea, but I won't like go sabotage someone's car because of it. Like, I'll fucking go buy my own goddamn milk tea.
The thing that I would have believed he would have quit the team. Like, I would have believed that he's looking around and he's going, you know what, we're outsiders here. And that's what they were going for. They were trying to build that Hong Kuo thought they were outsiders inside the team, that they weren't be given a fair shake. And that is a real thing. Again, in racing, I think the part of this that's good is that when you have a racing team and you have two cars in the racing team, there's a number one car and there's a number two car. And especially when you have a limited budget, there's only so much money and resources that can go around. If you're working on one car, you can't be working on the other. So this is a real thing between teammates in racing is, hey, why is this guy getting the thing that I don't get? Oh, well, we only have one set of that suspension and he drives a certain way, so he gets it and yada, yada, yada. I get it. And that does cause rivalry. Some of the best rivalries in motorsports have been between teammates. But to go from I feel left out to I will actively sabotage the team I'm with, and then continue to cheat against them after I've tried to sabotage them in several different ways, not only sabotaging a car, sabotaging them in the press, sabotaging them with this, oh, he's going to join this other racing team, like trying to emotionally blackmail him to join the other racing team because you didn't feel like you were fitting in and they weren't very nice to you.
And also having no remorse at all. Like he didn't even think he did anything wrong at all. He didn't feel sorry. He was like, I am definitely in the right. It's just, again, caricature. I mean, of course there are very petty people, but that wasn't his character that they had drawn up for most of the series, and then all of a sudden just 180 change. Just so because they needed him to sabotage the car. They needed him to turn his back. And all of a sudden his character changed.
Well, think about the character. The character is the most trusted confidant. Like, when Lin Zindong gets in the car, he's like, who do I want in this car with me? My buddy. Even though he has no rally experience. Right? And everything is riding on this. He has to win. And he chooses friend over bringing in like a professional. So then you're going to take this guy from the most trusted confidant to the biggest betrayer ever. It's not earned because it's lazy. And if they would have laid the groundwork for this character to slowly over the course of the series feel disenfranchised with the team and given him an excuse to really actually look at the team and go, you guys don't care about us. Like, what would have been wrong with actually having speeding cross the line a little bit, with pulling a part off of one car and giving it to Zhang Chi and not telling it, or something that the speeding teams kind of thought was, oh, that's an oversight, but that really affected the way the other team performed, the other side of the garage performed. Now they both feel betrayed. So now at least the two friends can look at each other and go, that wasn't cool. Now, you may think quitting is the right thing to do, but I don't think that's worth quitting. So we can still have our disagreement. We can still have our separation without it being a caricature. Like, throw some nuance into it. Let us have an argument between these two guys where they're saying, do you understand? These guys hate us. And it's like, no, it was an oversight. You need to get over it. I can't get over it. I'm out of here. Now, we've developed character and not just developed plot.
I went from like kind of liking the character, even though he was like very bland, to completely hating the character. And I'm like, but like not in a good way. Like, he's not a good villain to hate. It's just hating it because the character sucked. It was written badly.
Yeah, he's not hated for being a good villain.
Yeah.
Well, one of my biggest pet peeves, no, it's not really, but I appreciated a lot of the accuracy and the racing literacy that the show did. What annoyed me to no end was the team from their little pit tent constantly chirping in the driver's ears while they're racing on a rally stage. It's a thing in racing. There's team communications, and we see it in Formula One. We see it in other racing where they have a radio communication to the pit lane. But rally is different because you also have a co-driver sitting next to you that is telling you which turn is coming up next, because most of the drivers don't know. You don't know what the next turn you're flying into at 130 miles an hour is. So you have to intently focus on the guy sitting next to you barking out orders. And you can't do that when two people from the pit box are arguing with each other and telling you to go left, go right, go left, go right, while the guy in the seat next to you is telling you to go left, go right. I was like, oh my God, shut up. And that part drove me nuts, because not once did the driver in the car go, shut the fuck up, I'm driving a car really fast on a dirt road right now.
But, like, do they not actually have that, though?
So in rally, I don't know 100% if at the biggest level of rally in WRC, if they have any communication between the pits and the driver. I would expect they have very little, if any. And I know for a fact that at the lower levels of rally, you have no communication between your team except for when your car pulls in to the tent. Like, you take off from the tent and depends on the type of rally, the team doesn't hear from you until you cross to the next checkpoint. They have to hear from race direction if you've crashed. No one from the car goes, hey guys, we've crashed. There's radio checkpoints along the race course, and the organizers of the race keep track of who's crashed, who's not. So a lot of times, if your car crashes, the first time you realize it is when you're sitting at the finish line and they haven't showed up. Because race direction hasn't come to you and said, hey, oh, by the way, there was a crash on stage 4, and it was your guy. So to me, it would be massively distracting to have a co-driver yelling out corners, uphill, downhill, left, right, bank, camber, all this sort of stuff, all this information you have to have so you don't crash a car, and then meanwhile someone else chirping in your ear a completely different set of instructions. Like, that's madness. I wish I knew more about how the biggest levels of rally worked. I've just never seen any evidence that that is a thing. But maybe someone out there can correct me. Let me know. Tell me I'm wrong.
I mean, there basically wasn't any romance between the traffic cop and Ling Zhendong. So it was really weird that they brought her, like, backstory in. Like, and I think they, like, did that just to service the fact that, like, why she's so, like, willing to help Ling Zhendong and all that stuff. But it was just, like, I don't know. It was so unnecessary and, like, a waste of time, I felt like, with her backstory and her, like, first love, that I'm like, we don't need to know that.
Especially when we haven't learned anything about any of the other side characters.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know the first thing about the personal lives of nearly anyone on the speeding team or any of the, the young characters. Like, they like racing, that's about it. And then we just pause the whole show to go into this story about my first love was a musician and he left me. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
It was almost like apropos of nothing. Let me tell you a story.
Yeah. I don't understand it. Like, I did not need to know that at all. And I don't know if it had anything to do with, like, oh, you're learning, like, they're not going to end up together. So then they had to give you a reason why, like, look, because she's still hung up on her first love. I don't know. But it was very obvious to me that, like, even if they do have good feelings for each other, like, it wasn't going to happen in anytime soon, that they were going to be in some kind of relationship or whatever other than friendship. But, which I'm kind of glad for. Like, I know you said that you wanted more romance, but, like, oddly, I didn't feel like it was necessary in this. Because, again, like, I'm like, love isn't everything. There's other things that's more important.
No, I don't think I needed it here. I thought that the other relationship just was a little underserviced and a little annoying. And I do think, like, both of us kind of were like, ew, I'm kind of sick of these two. So I was kind of like, hey, can the other two have a cute moment or something? Just so that there's something that's not toxic here. But I wasn't begging for some long, drawn out, dating courtship thing here. It just didn't really make sense to where his head was at.
Yeah.
And obviously, because she had this really important long lost love, it wasn't where her head was at either.
Yeah. So that was some weird, unnecessary stuff that they threw in, which I feel like they could have used that time to, develop other characters better, like Honghua, like...
Yeah, there was some people that were very underserviced that it felt like a very odd departure for them to all of a sudden make us care about the traffic cop who's kind of a helper and a friend, and we like her fine.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know how much we really need to know. So I want to talk a little bit about the structure, especially the structure of the end. But overall, again, it's a weird show because there's two leads of the show. And so it makes it hard to figure out whose story we're actually telling. Because we start the show with Zhang Chi and his crash and the rivalry, and it's all from his point of view, and then he time travels, but it's Ling Zhendong that has all the screen time.
I feel like it's his story. It's Ling Zhendong's story.
Well, it's because he has the backstory. He has the backstory with the dad, the missing dad. Again, none of it makes any sense and isn't good, but it's the most fleshed out. You know, he has the wants and the cares.
Yeah.
But again, so does Jiangsu. He has wants and cares too that drive the story forward.
But you notice, like, in the beginning, it was voiced over, right, by Jiang Shi. But then in the end, it was voiced over by Ling Zhendong.
Right. But we still end the series on Jiang Shi. Other than that stupid special interview thing at the very, very end. Like, the story ends with Jiang Shi waking up.
Yeah, which was stupid, in my opinion, also.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But it's like the story begins and ends with him.
Yeah.
And he goes into that coma as a immature rally racer who only cares about racing, who lost his girlfriend, she ran away, he lost his mentor. The only thing that matters is being the fastest. It doesn't matter if he dies in the process. And he wakes up and you get half a scene where he's sort of like, it's all for the best. I just want you to be happy. That, to me, is just screaming that he's the main character. But for the majority of the show, that's not true. He's a side character. But then the only relationship that's being developed is between him and, what's her name again? Xiao He. So they're the only relationship. And that typically denotes the lead of a show. You have the lead couple, right?
Yeah.
So it's just very... I'm not saying it's confusing. It's fine. But I do think people online were a little confused, where they were like, wow, he's playing second banana in this to this other guy? Like,
they were complaining that the actor Hu Xianshu was not the main lead, which is not true at all. Because he for sure is the main lead. He has most of the screen time.
He plays two characters.
The actor is the main lead, right? Wang Yanling is the second male lead, right? But as for, and I think they were mistaking, like, your character being the main protagonist compared to the actor being the main lead. It's two different things here.
Right, but normally your main protagonist, and I get the character is being played by two different actors, but normally your main protagonist is your lead, your quote-unquote lead. I mean, sometimes you have a lead actor and actress, and, like, the lead actor is the experienced person, and the lead actress is the face on the poster. This happens.
Yeah.
And sometimes the lead character of a show is not the most interesting or not the most popular character. A lot of times it's the second or third that get to have all the fun. So we can discuss, but story structure wise, it was, again, it's not confusing, I don't get it, but it does confuse the point of view of the show. And it's why I think they had trouble with some of the backstory things, and why they had trouble with the ending in particular of, in what order should the bad guys be defeated? Felt like they kind of confused themselves of, wait, which bad guy should be defeated first? And how, do we have this master speeding rivalry end first? Or do we have father-son resolution first? And I think they got it wrong. I think they got the order out of order. I think the most important, if this guy's your lead, the most important relationship rivalry in it is father-son. Lin Zhendong versus his father.
It's also more interesting.
Very much more interesting. And it's also, I think, the fact that Master Chief, let's call him Master Chief Racer, is such a cheater. He's never a rival to anyone just based on how good he is in the car. There's never a question. In the entire show, his partner back in the early days was better than him. That's why he left him in the middle of the desert to die. Jiang Shi shows up on the scene. He's better than him. This young kid shows up on the scene. He's better than him. This guy is not an adversary unless he cheats. So why make that your final battle?
Yeah.
I wanted to see that guy almost get dismissed. I didn't even need a race. We would have had to have one. But I would have almost liked Jiang Shi to turn to him and be like, you realize you're not even in the conversation, bro.
Yeah.
You are so insignificant. And I get the reason they didn't do it and all that good stuff. But I do still stand by the fact that they should have kind of gotten rid of that rivalry and then left the father versus son, let the best man win, either old school is still the best school, or it's time to pass the torch, old man. And that's the last battle that I wanted to see to wrap it up. And instead they went the other direction, which kind of made it all feel immaterial, because all of the stuff with Master Chief Racer happens after the father-son stuff is resolved and after Lao Ye dies.
Yeah. So it was so anticlimactic. And then also that last episode where everyone just seems like everyone's meandering and like, oh, going to like wrap up loose ends. It was just like, I think they should have just like fought till the end, like the race, all the way up to the end and the excitement. I thought that the climax should have just been right at the end of the drama.
I agree. I think this one, if you have the opportunity in a drama like this to not have to wrap it up and then kind of just check in it all over the place, it feels like this was a drama because you didn't pay any attention to these side characters. There wasn't things to really wrap up. You could have had them go right to the brink and have the last scene be father and son looking at the cars sitting at the finish line and going like, I guess it's time for me to retire. And he's like, that's right. And it's me who sent you there. Don't you forget it. And then we're done.
Yeah. And then he could have his speech of like, I'm never going to forgive you, like what he had said. But that would have been a better, like, moment for me. It would have been more exciting. It would have been very, like, big climax. It would have felt like satisfaction with Ling Zhendong winning. It's just like, it had so many good elements if it were done that way instead of the ending that we were given. And it was just, I don't know. I was very like checked out then.
But they couldn't end it that way because Zhang Shi is the main character. Like, again, it's just de facto because we start the story with him and end the story with him. Like, he's the main character. And so the resolution between father and son,
but
they made secondary to everything else, which I think was a mistake.
It was a big mistake. And the thing is, character growth-wise, it was more important for Ling Zhendong, like, to find where he, was going. And, like, going from someone who's completely not interested in racing at all, and then Zhang Shi being his mentor. Actually, his real mentor was Zhang Shi. Like, the whole point was, like, Zhang Shi going and, like, bringing Ling Zhendong to where he needs to be. It really should have been Ling Zhendong's story.
I agree 100%, because the story they gave us was, it was all a dream. Nothing you watched was real.
That was stupid.
And you're like, but why, though? Like, now, and it's happened so often that I have a hard time trying to justify it. I'm like, but that means all the characters. Let's say the show was brilliant up until that point. You now have turned to the audience and said, hey, all those characters you fell in love with over the last 30 episodes, 28 episodes,
28, yeah,
don't exist in this world. They're all a figment of this imagination. It's such a middle finger to the audience, and I don't understand the fact that they keep doing it.
Yeah, they really love it. Like, in so many dramas we watched in recent times, like, it's just, they're like, oh, and, everything was a dream, everything was, and it's just like, okay, but, like, now everything we watched and, like, rooted for didn't really happen.
Which, again, brings me back to the only character that had any growth was Zhang Shi, because he's the only character that was real.
Yeah.
The rest of those characters that we, yes, Lin Zhendong exists in the world, but he's the rich brat version of himself from the first couple episodes.
Yeah.
He's not the speeding racing team alum version of himself that we grew to like and cheer for. Same thing with the mechanic and the motorcycle and the cop and all the...
And the motorcycle.
The motorcycle girl. I can't remember her name. I can never remember her name.
Yeah.
listen. I've been calling Master Chief Racer. I'm calling her Motorcycle Girl. There's Mechanic Guy. I'm obviously killing it with the names here. But I just don't understand. And I get maybe they have to throw in some sort of like grounded reality of, well, time travel isn't real. But at that point, 28 episodes in, I'm just like, that's the conceit of the show, and I don't care. I'm fine with time travel being real. And a lot of the things stayed the same. From, he broke his leg. That was just a fixed star. He left racing for 5 years. That was a fixed star. Lao Ye had to die. That was a fixed star. So he couldn't change the future that much, even going back in time. Why couldn't that be our lesson?
Yeah.
Why couldn't... There's some things you can change about your personality in your past, and there are some things you just can't change. I would have been very satisfied with that. Because then you can say, well, did he really time travel or did he not time travel? It doesn't matter. The lesson's still learned, is that some things done differently have different outcomes.
Something that I'm really also not understanding is why, that time comes when it's, that last race before Zhang Chi, has his car accident and goes into a coma. For now, it's like redone, and everyone knows that it's going to happen, and that everyone knows that this car is going to get wrecked to smithereens. Like, why didn't they just, prepare another one ahead of time? Why didn't Ling Zhendong just give them another car? Why did they have to, fix this car, and then knowing that it was gonna, still, some kind of malfunction, and then he would crash anyway?
Yeah, they acted so cavalier about it, too. And it was, almost like a joke, oh, here I come. It's my cue to walk in the door now, because we all know the future. I was just like, maybe just I'll go have coffee. And don't race. Just go to the organizer and be like, nah, we're good. And then just go have coffee. Why are we doing this?
Yeah. But even if, he felt like, oh, I have to do this race, and I have to, no matter what happens, it's gonna, all, end up the same anyway, at least try your best, Ling Zhendong should be like, well, your car's gonna be wrecked. Here's a fucking car. I have the best, manufacturer or whatever.
I happen to have a auto manufacturer over... I get what you're saying.
No, but in the beginning, he did. They made the fastest car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was his team that made the fastest car.
Yeah. So, why can't he just give him a not as fast... whatever. Give him an equivalent to his own car.
Just don't give him the broken-ass car.
Yeah. Don't just be like, okay, you can borrow my mechanics and fix your nasty-ass, fucked-up car. We already know some kind of malfunction's gonna happen, but here you go anyway. What the fuck? What?
But again, this goes to me the writers confusing themselves, because the whole reason this race happened the first time around is that Zhang Chi needed to know if he was better than Lin Zhendong. He needed to know if I was around while this guy was up and coming, would he even be a thing? Or would I have just been champion, right? And the young guy is like, am I only champion because you're not in the game? When we do it again, now we've done it again, because this is the second time we've been through this, and the history's different. They've raced each other already. They already know who's faster. They've proved it on multiple occasions. They've raced together against each other. There's no dick measuring left. There's no dick left to measure. They can put the dicks away. They don't need to measure anymore. Silly that they're there at all. Because the reason that they were there in the first place was a reason, and now they're there for no apparent reason. They're there just to see if history repeats? That's a weird gamble to play.
Yeah.
Let's see if history repeats where I drive really fast toward this cliff, which, by the way, fire the race organizers for putting the finish line next to a cliff. And being like, hey guys, so you're going to need to go as fast as you can to the finish line, because the winner is going to win by 0.2 seconds. But make sure you hit the brakes after that, because there's a cliff over there. These are some brilliant race organizers.
Yeah, yeah. whatever engineer that created this track or whatever definitely needed to be fired. And then also, like, is it okay to plant trees there? Like,
It's fine.
yeah.
It's Arbor Day.
So now it's time to rate the drama. So I went into this drama enjoying it. But then by the time it ended, I did not enjoy it anymore. So I would rate it a stepping out to get fresh air.
I think I'm in complete agreement. This for sure lives in its mediocrity. Like, I want to say and recommend to people, like, you should go watch it because, like, I did appreciate the swing. So maybe this is one I would say stepping out to get fresh air for sure for me, but might be worth a watch of the first 4 episodes to see if it's in your taste, understanding that it is probably going to disappoint by the end. Unless you just are so into the camaraderie and so into the friendship that you just forgive it for everything else.
Yeah.
I think neither of us thought that the good parts could live up to the bad. But I would encourage people to at least check out a couple episodes because I do think it's a worthy attempt, especially in the beginning. So now for the recommendation for this week, which is a little bit different than what we normally do. We normally talk about a song or a book or another show or movie or something else you should go seek out. But today I want to introduce you to a rally driver because Pegasus is all about the world of rally. And we lost a icon in the sport, especially for American rally drivers. At the beginning of 2023, a rally driver named Ken Block was killed in a snowmobiling accident. And massively sad. I mean, Ken Block has become synonymous with drifting, with sliding a car around, doing crazy things in a vehicle, especially for Americans interested in the sport. I think he's probably brought more North Americans into rally racing than any other single person in the sport. He was in rallying from 2005 up until he passed away, and he's maybe most famous for his Gymkhana series, which was just him going to different cities. He has one, I think, called Terrakhana, where he goes into the middle of the desert and just slides the car around, and it's this new-aged, highly edited, seamless car driving, car control. I mean, the stuff he does in a car, throwing it every direction, forwards, backwards, around in circles. He did an Electricana with an electric car that he's now, I think, Travis Pastrana is doing, kind of picking up the torch for that.
And that will be all for this week. And thanks for listening. And we will see you next week.